What's going on, beautiful people? So I've come into my fish room like I do every day, and some higher power told me to go over and look into the discus tank. Now, as I looked in there, I saw something I've never seen, but was kind of expecting, but kind of not. I didn't want to get my hopes up too high. So a couple of weeks back, there was Cory eggs all over the glass, and then I had a look in the tank, they were all over the leaves as well. You know, I was getting excited because I thought, there's so many plants in here, surely the Corys are going to be able to survive if they just sort of take cover. I mean, at any opportunity, the discus would definitely pick off some baby Corys. Not all in one go, of course, but before they got to a size where I could notice them. So it was at this point I became determined to catch the baby Corys on camera. Now that's a lot easier than it sounds. I spent ages and ages just sat there looking and waiting. And as many of you will know, patience is not one of my strong points. Quite a lot of time went by and I'd not seen anything, and it was at that point I started to question whether I'd seen the baby Corys in the first place. There was good old faithful bronze Cory that showed up, and even the albino Corys. I did see the stir-eyed too, they're at the back, they never come to the front for some reason. Then I kind of got bored of looking for the Corys and started focusing on the discus eyes. And after that I was really concentrating on close-up of plants. It was at that point that I needed a break, so I started cleaning out a tank, which is what I was supposed to be doing that day when I first came in. And you know, just doing a few little tidy up jobs around the studio. Then back at the tank, the discus are basically begging me for food. They're thinking, this guy's been up to the glass now all morning and he's not fed us once, what's going on? And as I sat there filming them, I could see something rustling down in the corner. I mean, there's no real sense of scale, so I can zoom out here and show you just how small it is. Now, they're not babies, but they're definitely less than juvenile. They're toddlers. They're toddler Corys. So at this point, I know that there's at least one baby there and I'm determined to get it properly on film. So I keep looking at that same spot. I stayed around there for a good 10 to 15 minutes and then I caught something out the corner of my eye. And there it is, guys, my first fully fledged bronze Corydoura in full frame. This is really exciting for me, and it's now another fish that I can add to my list of species that I've bred. Now granted, this wasn't intentional, but if you chuck enough fish in and give them enough cover, hopefully you'll get babies. Isn't it just the cutest little thing? Now I'm thinking if there's one there, there's got to be a lot more, hasn't there? It'd be really cool to see some albino ones as well. But look at this, the discus knows I'm filming something else and just like, I must get in the shot. So it's now day 2 since I first saw the Corys. Now, I'm sure many of you will know this, when something like this happens, you're sort of like drawn to the tank constantly. So the first thing I do when I come in this morning is run straight over and have a look. The lights had just come on and I saw something interesting. Well, interesting to me anyway. So after frantically grabbing the camera, trying to get up to the tank, move the discus fish out the way, and then get the fish in focus, I spotted another one of the baby Corys. Or it could have been the same one of the baby Corys, to be honest. But that's not the point. Look at it, it's up on the top piece of wood. This is right off the bottom. I've never ever seen this before, so I guess this shows like a new stage of development for the fish. I mean, they have probably been doing this. I've just not kept my eye out for it because I didn't even know they were in there. But this is really good because hopefully it means I'm going to see a lot more of them and we can start to see the true amount of Corys that are in the tank. 100. I want 100 in here. And you know what? This is just one of the reasons why I really love heavily planted tanks. Sometimes people comment, oh, you overplant your tanks. It's just what I like doing. Little things like this, you know, we've got big fish in there that can pretty much eat all tetras. Wouldn't hesitate at all to pick out any fry that they see down on substrate, and yet we've got babies surviving. So heavily planted tanks for the win, guys. And speaking of planted tanks, recently I set up one using pond compost. It was actually about 2 weeks now. We're starting to see our first problems. Well, not problems, just normal sort of new tank stuff. And here is the tank that I'm talking about, guys. Doesn't it look so good? Now I am hugely overjoyed with the progress of the tank. The plants are growing so well, and the vibrancy coming out in the reds is so strong. But 2 weeks in and right on cue, here comes the algae. Now this, to be honest, is the kind of algae that I like. What do you mean you like algae? Well, I'm talking about like this thready, stringy algae. To be honest, I think it's better described as fluffy algae. Now this is the kind of stuff that Amano shrimp absolutely love. Now I've got quite a few Amano shrimp down in my storage tanks at the moment, so I'm going to be adding those to the setup and they should really make a dent in all that algae, to be honest, pretty much overnight. But before we add in the Amano shrimp, we need to get on with some maintenance on this tank. That way when we put the Amanos in, they won't get disturbed by water changes and things like that. So the first thing we're going to do is a nice little glass clean. This is just a little bit of dust algae, wipes off really easy with no effort really at all. If you do have any stubborn bits on the glass, get your old razor blade out, come off in no time. Next up is my pipe cleaner that also looks a little bit like a mini toilet brush. This is really good for just gently stroking over plants and wood, that kind of thing. Anything that's got this kind of hair algae, it will just stick to it. You can rip most of it off, to be honest, quite easily. You'll never get all of it though. Now we've just put a ton of algae into the water column, haven't we? Not too bad, it'll get cleaned up by the filter, but we might as well do a nice quick water change, put some fresh water back in. The fish and the plants will thank us for it, to be honest. Don't forget to scoop out any dead leaves or anything floating on the surface. As it breaks down in the water column, it'll actually be producing nutrients for the algae to be able to survive. Get it out. I've also added a CO2 booster in there for the glutaraldehyde in it. That's really good for combating nuisance algae. Next up, I'm taking a load of tank water and putting it in a bucket. This is so we can clean out the pre-filter on the canister. To be honest, I cannot remember the last time I cleaned this, so hopefully it's not too bad. To be honest, I was expecting worse. Give these sponges a nice quick rinse off, slide them back on, and we can put the filter back on again and continue to do a great job. Whenever you clean out a filter and switch it back on again, you'll always get this weird sort of misty, dirty stuff come out. Don't worry, it'll clean itself up in no time at all. Now I've got quite a few houseplants dotted around the place, so I used the dirty tank water because it's so full of nutrients and the plants will absolutely love it. Next up, we need to catch the Amano shrimp. Now this usually goes one of two ways. It's really easy or really hard. It's like they've got their own personalities. Fortunately this time, most of them just kept swimming into my net. I went with 6 Amanos for this size tank, 100 litres, little 2-foot tank. I don't think you really need a lot more than that unless you've got a serious problem. Now the temperature of my tanks is the same, they're all filled up with the same water, so there's no problem at all just moving them straight across. Now my golden ram in here has never actually seen Amano shrimp, so I was a bit worried about what was going to happen, but thankfully nothing has happened. Paid a little bit of interest to start, but that was it. He's not bothered him since. So there we have it then guys, the tank is looking great and the Amanos got to work straight away as expected. I'm honestly expecting to come back tomorrow morning and there not be any algae left anywhere. These guys are just little workhorses, they will not stop until everything is gone. So it has been quite a while since we spoke about the Amazon tank. It's doing so good but does need a little bit of TLC. All the fish and inhabitants are doing just as good as ever, but there still hasn't been a respawn of the Bolivian rams. These guys laid eggs and raised them up to wigglers when I first put them into this tank, about a month or so ago. They've stayed together as a nice little pair, but they've not done any spawning since. I'm hoping that by doing a big water change with a slightly lower water temperature will trick them into thinking the rainy season has come and then they might spawn again. This is a trick that I've heard many breeders speaking about, so hopefully it will work for me as well. Also feeding bloodworm and things like that can really help, so I'm going to do that as well. Whilst doing a water change, it also makes sense to wipe down all the glass as well. Just make this a habit. So my water filler-upper system basically is attached to my tap, which I can swivel left and right to control temperature. I've marked a little notch where I know the temperature should be for most of the tanks. So I now know if I put it down a little bit to the cold side, we'll drop a few degrees in temperature. Now I can't just rely on that, I need to test the temperature as it goes in as well. And yep, I was right, I've done this so many times, so I do know. It was bang on, a couple of degrees less than the tank currently is. So we can fill the tank all the way back up again, and straight away the fish started behaving very differently. It was as if something was different for them. Obviously it was, the water parameters had slightly changed. Now the reason you drop a couple of degrees is you're trying to simulate rainfall. Rainfall normally triggers spawning in many fish. I don't know exactly why, maybe there's something we should look into later, but I'm sure lots of you guys will know in the comments, so let me know. Also, feeding of live foods and frozen foods can also help with bringing on the breeding. I've now got a fridge freezer in the studio. Not only am I going to be putting my lunch in there for the day, I'll also be bringing frozen foods for the fish. Not only will this increase the chances of breeding across the board in all the tanks, it also means we're going to have some epic feeding videos in the future. Now we don't currently have any bloodworms, but I do have a nice flake food. So why not stick that in and see how the fish behave? This is one of my favourite things to do, and I found the best way of feeding the fish is just to put the flake straight into the power head. You can see there how it breaks it all up into just the right sizes and spreads it all over the tank for all the fish to be able to consume. This tank has been running for nearly 2 months now faultlessly, and it's an absolute joy to have in my fish studio. The Colombian tetras are still some of my absolute favourite fish. I just love the colours on them, so vibrant. That, and they do behave like little piranhas as well. So shortly after the change now on the feeding, I'm seeing the rams behaving a little bit aggressively towards each other. This could be a sign of breeding, and I have seen them cleaning the area where they spawned last time. So fingers crossed we can get some more babies. If we do, like I said before, I'm going to remove them from the tank and put them in their own little nursery one, power feed them, grow them up and get them to a decent size. Bolivian rams are a massively underrated fish. They're so beautiful looking, and they're generally peaceful as well, so they're really good for community tanks. The only time I do see aggression from them is when they had their babies, but even then they were just chasing fish away rather than attacking them. As soon as the fish left the area, they went back to their babies and didn't pursue them. A great choice if you're ever wondering about putting a dwarf cichlid in your community tank. We've also got an awesome little collection of bristlenose plecos and Cory catfish. I've got 3 bristlenose, they're all females unfortunately. I've never actually seen a male bristlenose in real life, not in any of my fish stores either. I'm going to keep an eye out for one in future because I think that'd be great to add to the tank. The Corys though are awesome. We've got Duplicarius, which is very similar to the Adolphi. We've got Panda Corys and we've got Leopard Corys. Now the Leopard Corys are the shyest of them all. I don't see them that often. They're very skittish. If I come near the tank, they clear off. If I stay still, they're okay. When I put the pellets in like this, they always know they come to the foreground. We see them in this period, but usually when I'm doing tank maintenance or anything like that, they'll be gone. They like to hide out in the back areas in the dark. That's fine though, we're providing an environment for all kinds of fish, and there's plenty to see in the foreground all the time, isn't there? Sometimes it's nice to have a treat of seeing something you don't see very often. Corydoras are absolutely amazing fish. Now I've never kept them in a tank on their own. We call those species only tanks, but I'm currently collecting resources to be able to create one. Cannot wait for it, it's going to be so good. It's also worth noting that the Corys and the bristlenose can't just rely on the flake food. I supplement with a sinking pellet and algae wafers for the bristlenose. That said, all the other fish still try and eat them. Apart from the algae wafers, no one but bristlenose seems to like them.